تبارك الله رب العالمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله الذي جعل ذكره طمأنينة للقلوب وجلاء لها عن رين الذنوب ومطردة لوسواس الخناس المكذوب، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الداعي إلى كل فعل محبوب وأمر مطلوب، وعلى آله وأصحابه المقتفين سبيله على خير أسلوب. أما بعد، فيقول رب تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المنزل: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. وقال تعالى: وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة وقل رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. صدق الله العظيم. In our last session on this series in which we are addressing parent-child relationship, we spoke about the fifth command that we find in the Quran, where Allah says, وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. And we pondered on the meaning of nahara yanharu, وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا, meaning do not reject them, do not reject your parents, do not repel them, do not scold them, do not blame them, do not rebuke them, do not admonish them, do not reprimand them, do not criticize them, do not denounce them, do not censure them, do not vilify them, do not taunt them. And we talked about the fact that living as we do in this culture that is influenced heavily by the teachings of Freud is that we end up indulging in telling off of parents and taking them to task and putting them down and blaming them and dressing them down and disparaging them and preaching at them and lecturing at them and castigating them and abusing them and shouting at them and screaming at them. And we do this thinking that we are justified in what we do because we feel that now we are more able to understand what is right and wrong. So now today, in this 8th lesson on parent-child relationship, after having passed through, we did ihsan to parents, which is kindness to parents, general kindness. Then khafdu janah ad-dhul, lowering the wing of humility towards parents. وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. And I said the fact that Allah is saying وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ means do not even say uff. Do not even say uff to them. Then we did, as I said last week, وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. And تَنْهَرْهُمَا is a composite meaning that requires the understanding that anything that causes pain to the heart of the parents must be avoided because of the command of Allah on this. There is no discussion, there's no debate to be had about this. The way you speak to the parents, the body language, everything has to be in accordance with the command of Allah. And here in the 6th command, Allah is calling you to make dua. He's calling you to pray for your parents. And He's not only calling you to pray for your parents, but He's calling you to reflect on certain things while you pray for your parents. And that's the verse I read to you. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. O Allah, show mercy unto my parents as they did show mercy unto me in my infancy. And Allah is mentioning specifically Amain, to the 2 years, the first 2 years of your life. And the problem with the first 2 years of the life of every human being is that we have a complete blank in our memory of what these 2 years were. We have no idea of what our parents went through in the first 2 years, and Allah is asking you to reflect on that. Every human being, our memory, what's your earliest memory that you have had in life? Your earliest memory for human beings in general is never before 3. Very rarely you would find human beings who would remember something that has happened before the age of 3 or 2. The first 2 years is very difficult. We don't have a memory. There it's blank. And Allah is saying to you to ask for kindness, for mercy to the parents, and reflect on those first 2 years. Reflect on when you were in infancy. How did your parents take care of you? So what were you then? You were baby. You know, we have the saying in English, do not be a baby. Well, today I want you to be a baby. I want you to think about the fact that you were a baby. Every child, every person, every adult was a baby. And think about what happened when you were a baby. And how did your parents treat you? What did they have to do? That is what we need to reflect on in order to understand, to get to grasp the first 2 years is something that is required to ponder on. Allah is saying, "Kama rabbayani saghira," as they did, and He's saying, "Amain," 2 years, and ishkurli, thank me for those 2 years. So what happened in those 2 years? So I would like to go through that. And the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that the human being communication is the highest activity of the human being. We speak more than we do anything else. So communication is at the heart of relationship, how you communicate. So when you were a baby, how did you communicate? You did communicate, and your parents also communicated to you. But how did you do it? That's the first thing you have to understand, is that you communicate via crying. That's how you communicate. You cried. And it is important to recognize that the human brain is designed such, the human ear and the brain is designed to receive sound, human sound, different from all other sound. If you look at the studies of the human ear, the frequencies in which it is optimized to listen, it is human voice. That is where it is, and because there's a frequency between 20 hertz and 2,000 hertz, and that frequency of the human voice of 165 to 255 between men and women, that is optimized to that. So when you hear other sounds, it doesn't have that effect on your brain. And a few years ago, right here in our university here, there's in Oxford University, 2 researchers did some studies about the effect of different sounds on the brain. And they put people on the monitoring, they scanned their brains while they were listening to different sounds. And the sound that they found that was the most alarming in the brain of the human being, of any human being, the sound that is the most gripping of your attention, the one that sets off an emergency in your brain, because it goes straight into your temporal gyrus and your prefrontal cortex, the areas that are responsible for when you see an animal, when you see a lion coming to you, or it puts you in a state of high alert. And that sound is the sound of a baby crying. When a baby cries, it is the most effective of drawing the attention of the human being. It transforms it transforms your heart and your mind such that even if you're in the middle of sleep, ask parents who know about this. When the baby cries, they jump out of sleep as if they were not asleep at all. They become completely alert. There's an emergency. In fact, they tested these people with reaction times. There's a game called whack-a-mole. The young children would know about that. Whack-a-mole is that they performed better after hearing the sound of a baby crying. That is how powerful this cry of the baby. It's a high frequency, and it's designed specifically to go within 150 milliseconds it's in. That's the amount that it takes for you to blink. It hits the deepest parts of your brain and creates an emergency. An emergency that wants you to become super alert. That's the sound of the baby crying. Now the question is, you were a baby. Did you cry? No, you probably think I was a very good baby. I didn't cry. So what's the average? Let's ask ourselves, what's the average of crying of a baby? How much does a baby cry every day? What do you think? For a normal healthy baby every day, a normal healthy baby cries in the first 6 weeks, they cry for 2 hours. That's normal. If your baby is not crying that much, then there's probably something wrong. So if you spread that, and he doesn't cry from 9 to 5 and give you rest at night. What it does, it spreads that off in 5 minutes burst, when the parents has to jump into this alert and wake up and say, oh no, and they have to be super attentive to that cry. So if you spread that 2 hours of crying, it will turns out to about 60 different sessions throughout the night and day in the first 6 weeks. And when after 6 weeks, it reaches 3 hours a day. That's normal crying. That's just first gear of crying. And the parent has to jump out and be ready. And how do they jump out? They're in super alert. An emergency sets off in their brain, and they say they do not cry back to you and shout to you, oh, why are you making all this noise? What do they say? Oh, my lovely. Oh, my. They find the most beautiful words to say to you. So much so that scientists have now discovered something they call motheries, or child-directed speech, CDS. The child-directed speech is a special language that parents use for their children. All the beautiful words, the most beautiful. Oh my lovely, oh my darling, don't cry, why are you crying? And we are screaming 6 times a day on average, and then more than that. That's just first scare. And the parents is jumping up in the night, and parents know that, and this myth that only mothers are waking up, it's not true. It happens on both. But because mothers are the ones who feed, fathers are also affected by the cry of the baby. But because the mothers are the one who feeds, people think there's a myth that the fathers don't hear. They also hear. So then after that so the baby cries when it is hungry. When you were hungry, you cried. When you needed burping, you cried. When you had tummy trouble, you cried. When you needed a diaper change, you cried. When the button on the clothes on your that you are wearing affected you, when the tag on your shirt affected you, you cried. When you wanted to be hugged, you cried. When it was too cold, you cried. When it was too hot, you cried. When you wanted to be cuddled, you cried. When you wanted to hear your mother's voice, you cried. And when you wanted to hear your mother's heartbeat, you cried. As a baby, you all did. And this was all normal, run of the day. And your mother and father, they did it, they came. And this is in these first 2 years. And that's just first gear. Second gear is when you reach 8 months. What happens when you reach 5 months? When you reach 5 months, you had something called teething. You started to grow teeth. And then you cried, your crying regime, that was the baseline crying, the 2-3 hours a day. And then you cried more now because you're teething. And you are crying in the night, and your mother and father, they're all getting up and trying to see what they can do for you. What can we do for you? And then that increases. Then fourth gear is, I don't have the time to go through all the levels of things that you're doing, but then when you reach 8 months, then an additional level of crying started. That additional level of crying is the one where you have separation anxiety. You begin to feel that if the parent leaves the room, then there's a problem, and you started crying. You wake up in the middle of the night crying. So that's third gear. And then fourth gear, ask the parents who have suffered this one. This one is colic. You've ever heard about colic? Ask parents about colic. The definition of colic is to cry for more than 3 hours a day, for more than 3 days a week, for more than 3 weeks. Colic. And then with all of this calling and pushing, the parent is doing it willingly, lovingly, and they're hugging you, and they're worried about, is something wrong with my kid? Is something wrong with my child? And they're speaking to you with mother ease, with lovely language, and they're cuddling you and holding you and doing all that they can to help you. This is the example this is the relationship that we had. We cried and screamed, and it was sending off emergencies in their brain, as I said to you. And they were going to the edge of insanity in trying to make sure that you were happy in everything. And they responded with the best of language, with the best response someone can have, the most loving response. In these 2 years, they were responding to you. Your parents responded to your cries with soft, kind words. They responded to your screams with tender whispers of love. They were being moved from deep within their hearts and their brain by the most effective alarm known to man, the cry of a baby. More powerful than the sound of a pneumatic drill, more piercing than the sound of a siren, and yet they remain steadfast with responses of love and comfort, comforting words and loving words. If Allah wanted, He could have created human babies able to stand up and walk around and feed themselves in a few hours like He does with so many animals. But there is wisdom in this, because there is, in that wisdom, there is a dependence that is to come, a reversal of roles, a time when the parent will be frail, the parent will be weak and perhaps even senile, and the baby would have grown up into a strong adult, an erudite, speaking adult. And the test then would be, how would they respond to the cry of the parent and the asking and the begging of the parent? Would they maintain words of love and compassion, or would they shout back at the parents? This is what is barram biwalidati, as I told you last week about the behavior of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who said to his mother when he said that oh, Allah have mercy on her as she treated me in my infancy. Her response was, may Allah have mercy on you kama barartani. Allahumma rahimakallahu kama barartani, as you treat me now. Allah is perfectly capable of making babies speak in the cradle, as He did for Isa alayhi salam, who defended his mother in the face of accusations of the worst kind. But here also, in the voice of that baby, we have the exhortation, the call towards being kind to parents. And we are told that he said, what did Isa alayhi salam said in the cradle? That Allah has made me. وَجَعَلَنِي, and among the other things, وَجَعَلَنِي بَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي, made me kind. وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا, and He did not make me into a harsh tyrant and someone of evil, someone who thinks that, the person who is Jabbar is the one who does not see that laysa alayhi haqqun, that laysa li ahadin alayhi haqqat. This is the one of the explanations of the meaning of the word Jabbar, is the one who thinks that he has that no one has any right over him. And that's the complete opposite to bar, to being bar, to being a person who is kind to their parents, who is described as bar. So, in this example of Isa alayhi salam, we have both that of a baby that is speaking, that is conversing, and a baby that is saying, is reminding us in the cradle that, look, kindness to parents is of great value, because it is the opposite to shaqi. It is the opposite to being removed from everything that is good, everything that is ultimately good, everything that is ultimately the salvation. Jabbar is the one who is the tyrant, the one who indulges in all those qualities we spoke about in the previous sessions. The tyranny against our parents, and the ones that lead you into hurting the heart of the parent who has spent these early years, taking care of you with all the dedication and love and commitment a human being can do. And they did so because of the love that Allah has placed in the heart. That is the 2 years. So when you say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا, you're talking about that dedication. And remember, so it's filling in the blanks of our memory. We don't know what they did, but they had to do this every time you spoke. And now today I want to leave you with a story, a conversation that happened at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where a young man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there are some people question this riwayah, but if it's good enough for Imam Qurtubi, then it's good enough for us. So I'm going to read this. جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he said, يا رسول الله إن أبي أخذ مالي, that my father is taking from my wealth. So he said, فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأتني به بأبيك. So go and call your father. So when he went to call his father, Jibreel alayhi salam, Angel Gabriel came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, إذا جاءك الشيخ فاسأله عن شيء قاله في نفسه. Ask him of something he had said. When the old man comes to you, ask him what he has said he has said something ما سمعته أذنا, that his ears have not heard it. He said it in his mouth, but his ears didn't. He said it very quietly. But Allah heard it. And Allah told him to ask him to say it. Now, so when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he started asking, and Rasulullah said, okay, leave everything else and tell me what you said, that your ears, your two ears did not hear. And he said, oh Allah, that Allah is increasing us in your yaqeen. How could you know this except that Allah has told you? So he said, Allah increases you in our yaqeen, our belief in you. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell me what is it? And you have to recognize here the Arabs had the language. They were high culture. They indulged in high linguistic culture. And they articulated their feelings and their emotions in high language, in poetry. So this is the poem I'm going to read. And pay attention to it because it reflects back on those 2 years. It reflects on the relationship you've had with your parents. So the man said, this is what I said. غدوتك مولودا ومنتك يافعا تعل بما أجني عليك وتنهل. From infancy I nourished you and sustained you in adulthood. Sustained by my kindness you ate and drink. وإذا ليلة ضافتك بالسقم لم أبت لسقمك إلا صاهرا أتململ. Whenever you were visited by illness in the night, I spent it over your pain and complaint, awake and quivering. كأني أنا المتروك دونك الذي دونك بالذي ترقت به دوني فعيني تمهل. As if I was the one who was afflicted. My eyes overflowed with tears that which you were suffering. تخاف الردى نفسي عليك وإنها لتعلم أن الموت وقت مؤجل. My heart started to fear that I may lose you, you may die, in spite of knowing that death is but a delayed appointment. فلما بلغت السن والغاية التي إليها مدى كنت فيك أؤمل. So when you grew up to the age and the stage that I for so long was hoping that you would one day reach, جعلت جزائي غلظة وفظاظة كأنك أنت المنعم المتفضل. You turn my reward into blunt harshness and rudeness, as if you are my benefactor and you are the giver of charity to me. فليتك إذ لم ترعى حق أبوتي فعلت كما الجار المثاقب يفعل. That for if you care not about my right as a parent, then I wish at least you treat me as a neighbor would to an adjacent neighbor. فأوليتني حق الجار ولم تكن علي بمال دون مالك تبخل. That you give me the right, you give me what the rights of the neighbor. You treat me like you would at least treat a neighbor. Today we shout and scream at our parents because we've been influenced by a culture that teaches people to blame parents. What you have to remember is that if someone comes to you schooled in the teachings of shaitan, in the teachings of Freud, who tells you to blame your parents, then know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he heard this poem, he grabbed that boy, he grabbed him by his lapel and he said, "Anta wa maluka li abik." This is that you and your wealth belongs to your father. What are you talking about? Because the man was saying, he's referring back to that time. I spent all this time. So what if I take something for me to eat? Now I need money. Now I need your support. And you are turning your ghilzatan, and you have turned it into harshness and bluntness. So this is the way to fill in. May Allah, I hope from today you would have had snippets to fill in that blank of memory that you have for your life when you were a baby. Your parents spent that time in full dedication, and it is for that you have to refer to when you say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. May Allah bless us to say this every day after salah, regularly, with true understanding and reflection on what those 2 years were like for your parents. So that you will not be able to say, when a shaitan comes and say, your parents didn't do anything for me, then your response has to be, if my parents did not do anything for me, then I would not have been alive. I could not be alive. Without such dedication, without such care and seeking of comfort for you, you could not be alive today, had it not been for the mercy and dedication of your parents. May Allah grant us true gratitude for that. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ.
تبارك الله